Okay. All right. What a beautiful weekend, huh? I was out this morning on a showing, and oh my gosh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
This is
This is my kind of summer.
exactly. This is the kind of weather that brings people to Chicago.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. I'm over here on Sheridan Road, and our balcony overlooking the lake, and it's just unbelievable how beautiful the lake is. And anyway, so Terrence won't be joining us today. I guess good for Terrence. He's busy with taking new buyer apps. So it does kind of seem like suddenly in the last, maybe over the weekend or something, somebody's turned the faucet back on. I don't know. What do you think, Wes?
I don't know. Is that what you're hearing, or is it just because of Terrence?
Well, I've gotten a little busier too. I put a couple of things together over the weekend, and I dropped the price on one of my listings, and have all of a sudden all kinds of activity on it. That's where I was this morning. And the agent that I met was telling me she had lined up a few things to show her buyer this morning, but they all went under contract over the weekend. So,
oh, good.
Yeah, I know. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah,
because I got to get this place sold. So, for this client, he really wants it sold. So,
yeah, good.
Yeah,
well, that's good news.
I should maybe make a little plug. It's my my condo down in Hyde Park at 5000 Southeast End. It's beautiful Art Deco, Great Gatsby era building. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,600 square feet. The building was built originally like 1925, 1927. That era is a co-op building. And 10 years ago, they deconverted it to condos, which is a difficult thing to do, actually, because you have to have a huge percentage of people agree to it. I don't know if you need 100%, but I think you need 90% or so. I'm not sure what the rules
deconvert. No, I think they moved it from like 60 something to 70-ish. It's not.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
It's not like I mean, if you're deconverting a condo building to a rental, deconverting it from condos, you need 85%.
Is that what they moved it to?
Yeah. Because of all the deconversions that were going on with these high-rise buildings downtown and on the lakefront, and people who didn't, it was 75%. And people who didn't want to, sell, they were being forced to sell. So essentially,
well, still people will be.
Well, yeah, no, they'll be forced to sell. But now, so they made a big stink, and the city changed the ordinance. You had to have 75% to 85%. That's what we're going through with Field Harbor parking right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's we got a couple of sore heads, of course, that don't want to sell and who are kind of holding up the process, but I don't know what we're going to do about it. It's an interesting process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I thought what we could talk about today would be, I was reading in the paper last week about the results from the census, and the 2020 census, which got delayed because of COVID and all that stuff. The data was late coming out, but surprisingly, and it turns out that the city has actually gained population, whereas the suburbs have lost population, which is the first time since the 50s.
I thought the more interesting part about that was, I mean, the Chicagoland suburbs didn't do that poorly, but it's the rural areas and the far southern counties that really lost a lot. That southern tip county lost like, I don't know, a third of its residents. Yeah. But to me, that's interesting because there's been all this talk about people leaving the cities, and that hasn't really happened even across the country. Everything was more urbanized again. There was more population drop in the rural areas and more population growth in the urban areas. But Chicagoland was the only part of the state that really, generally like didn't drop overall the state lost population, and we lost that legislative seat because of that. But it's Chicagoland is the area that not only didn't but actually grew. So it's just it's opposite of what everybody was saying, and especially in that everybody was saying people leave in the city because of taxes, because of the crime, whatever it was. And not only did the city not, but the entire Chicagoland region is the one that held its ground more than any area in the entire state. And it was all the rural areas that caused the population decline. So I don't know, that's just opposite of what everybody's been saying. Now I also wasn't too surprised, because even when we were losing a lot of population in the Chicagoland area, the inner city was growing at a rate that it has never grown in history. Like all of the downtown areas, and a lot of that due to, I think, Rahm Emanuel's success is at getting all those corporate relos in Chicago, and really helping with building and development in the in these downtown neighborhoods. It really did, I think, kind of save and re-energize the the central business district. But yeah, we were seeing growth that even from that they had never seen before, even back before the 50s, when Chicago was growing like leaps and bounds, that the downtown neighborhoods had never grown to that speed. So so on one hand, I wasn't too surprised to see that Chicago did well with that, but overall the stats just kind of show opposite of, I think, what everybody was thinking.
Right. Well, particularly with COVID, I think people felt like people were leaving the urban areas because of COVID, and wanted more room, and wanted distance, and wanted space, and
that still could be true, because the 2020 census won't really show that yet. But even then, like I said, that they weren't leaving for the farmlands. They were leaving for the Chicagoland suburbs, which in the stats did well, comparatively.
But I thought, did I read this wrong? I thought that the suburbs actually lost population versus the city. I thought
there were some. I'll have to look at the stats again, but the collar counties, the 5 Chicago counties of the 5 counties of Chicagoland, actually did pretty well. Again, compared to the state actually losing population, it wasn't from those 5 counties.
Yeah.
But which is, again, like I'm saying, that's where people would have gone if they were leaving downtown for COVID. Like I said, they weren't going to the farmlands downstate.
Right. Wow. I mean, being Chicagoans, it's like,
not in any mass they weren't. Yeah.
What are you crazy?
But yeah, I think it's all kind of interesting. But also, what the census isn't showing, and I would love to see, I'm sure there's stats or data somewhere, I would be interested in seeing what the actual socioeconomics are, because as the we were supposedly losing population, but the downtown neighborhoods were growing dramatically. That was a very different economic demographic.
That said in the paper this morning, what I saw in the paper this morning is that the city has lost something like 10% of its African-American demographic, to the point now that the African-American population represents about, I think it was, I want to say 29%.
It's 29%.
29%. And the Latino population now represents, I thought it was about 30 or 31%, and the white population is about 32%, I think. So it's surprisingly, so the Latino population gained, I think. So I can't remember the statistic. I thought it was, I should probably go grab the article real fast.
And that was true everywhere, though. Yeah. Across the country, the Latino population grew, but we don't need to dwell on that.
What'd you say? What?
don't need to dwell
I went
on
and
any of
grabbed the
that.
article. It says, oh, and it also really interesting talking about well, what got me to read the article was the drop in new homes being built. And it's basically, well, what the fella, what's his name that we were on the call last week, the new corporate guy who's in charge of all the sales managers he was talking about. Anyway, whatever his name is, he was talking about, well, and this article confirmed what he said, that basically the region hadn't really rebounded from the crash of '08 yet. That housing inventory was low and hadn't rebounded, and then of course we got hit with COVID, which just exacerbated the lack of inventory, and people wanting to move and improve their living situation. That combined with the low interest rates. So the example he gave, because of course he's in San Francisco or something, and he's used to talking these kinds of numbers, but he was talking like, so for instance, somebody who could only afford $1 million home at a 4% interest rate, at 2.5% interest, could probably afford like a $1.4 million home.
Right.
Something like that. So all of those factors combined to create a unique environment for both buyers and sellers. I mean, it's a good market for a seller because the prices are up, but it's a good market for a buyer because they can afford to spend more. So even though the prices are up, and he didn't see any of those trends changing. Well, particularly like the low interest rates are not going to change anytime soon, at least not this year anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
well, really, even if they change, they're not going to be high. They're going to still be low. They might
maybe like change from 2.5 to 3.5, something like that. So, right. But this article,
it's still very low.
Yeah, but this article is saying because the census also was showing that there's just a drop in new homes. There's not enough inventory, and think about it. When we had the crash in '08, a lot of millennials didn't leave home. There was the joke about how people couldn't get rid of their kids after college. Their kids just came home and lived at home and lived in the basement or whatever. And, it's pretty common scenario because of the economics. Well, now all of those kids are they don't want to live in the basement anymore, and they're starting to form their own households and whatnot. So it's really an interesting market that we're in. And but this article was saying, now wait a minute, okay, I want to get these numbers.
Well, I'd rather talk about the economic numbers.
Okay, so what do you mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I actually don't know. I would like to see that, because the big change over these past several years from us being less, losing a lot of factory jobs and blue collar jobs, but gaining in the corporate headquarters and the white collar jobs and stuff. It'd be interesting to see what the demographic, like the economic demographic changes would be.
You mean in terms of increased salaries or whatever?
Yeah, like average salary, like just how it's, demographically changing the landscape of Chicago, because I think it's been pretty dramatic, the loss of population where it is, and the gain of population where it is, and what those jobs represent and everything. It's and it makes me wonder why, like we've seen, Crane's headlines recently and stuff about, despite, everything going on in the city right now, that there is a lot of like billionaires like investing a lot of money and stuff in the city. And I think it's probably because of that they see what the, these changes, mean for the next, whatever.
Well, I know that because of Chicago's central location geographically, that there's a huge tech crunch with creating fiber optic, data centers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Cranes talks about it quite a bit, and it's. So I think with the advent of big data, I think it's having a huge. I think you're right, Wes. I think it's having a huge impact. And I guess we got to give Ram credit that he did a great job of attracting like McDonald's and Google, and
we have more corporate headquarter relocations in that time frame, those few years, than they did like the 30 years prior. I mean, it was significant. And I think a lot of it, like his administration also, like, kind of plowed forward on allowing a lot of development in the city and in those downtown neighborhoods, and it was all kind of part of a grander plan. And I think it actually did work. And I think the Tribune actually went to him for comments too, because they realized a lot of this kind of surprise in the census had to do with some of his administration's whatever programs, whatever. But yeah, I think kind of he'll go down in history for that, because I think it really did kind of turn Chicago's trajectory, not from bad to good necessarily, but just from like kind of something staid to something, moving in that more in that economic direction.
Well, and perhaps the pendulum did swing a little too far in terms of developing the downtown. And I think Lori Lightfoot has been a good, she hasn't been too extreme, but she's been a good moderating influence. I think she hasn't gone crazy progressive and totally dismantled all of that. Thank goodness, because
but I mean, we haven't. It's at least economically, there hasn't been an overdevelopment because everything's been absorbed. So all those rental buildings got rented up. I mean, I think if it is overdevelopment, it's more of a a personal opinion, by people that don't necessarily want that type of change or whatever. But it's not like economically there was an overdevelopment.
Yeah, I mean, look at Sterling Bay. There was just a thing in Cranes last week about Sterling Bay, how they're so invested in that Fulton market now, and they just closed on a huge sale over there on another one. So no, you're right about that. But no, I think Lori Lightfoot's doing a good job, and I think her moderating influence was neat. Well, obviously, Rahm wasn't going to get reelected with the Laquan McDonald business, So, I think
that was his big misstep for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, huge. And I don't know. I mean, I saw in the paper a couple weeks ago that Lori Lightfoot's talking about not running again. But I mean, who could blame her, really? I mean, she's really got a lot of shit. But
yeah, and regarding the COVID stuff, it didn't matter which way she went. Everybody was upset, or a lot of people were upset.
Well, I think you have to be some kind of a nut to want that job to begin with. But never mind. Public service, you got to be crazy. What?
Everybody was so up in arms when she was locking down the city, and then when she let Lollapalooza happen, everybody was up in arms, like, you can't open up this. Yeah, everything. It's just like, no matter what you do, you're gonna get.
That's right. You're never going to make everybody happy. Which I actually, I'm an alumna of Roosevelt University, and we have a quarterly book group that meets online, and I just finished reading for that group the book by Eleanor Roosevelt, because of course it's Roosevelt University, and was named after Roosevelt while they were in the process of forming Roosevelt.
Yeah.
What?
The convention. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying when Roosevelt University was forming as an institution, they had some unexciting name that they were going to call it, and in the process of that, Roosevelt FDR died because he died rather suddenly. Well, I guess. I mean, seemingly suddenly. I don't think he was as good a health as he let people think. But anyway, so they ended up, which was a huge thing at the time when he died. People were really bereft at his passing, and so they ended up naming Roosevelt University after him because of that. So it was Eleanor Roosevelt who came and was kind of I don't know what the right word is, sponsor or mentor. I mean, whatever. What's the right word?
Wasn't he also like nominated at the Auditorium Theater? Or was that?
That could be. I'm not sure about that. I need to look into that. But
I thought he was, and I think it was even still like under construction or something, like they hadn't finished it yet or something. But I'm thinking at the National Convention there, and that's where he was nominated. I could be wrong about that, but
no. Well, the Auditorium Theater had been built, I think, back in the late 1800s.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it was in the 1800s.
But it was used as a USO center during World War II. It was
it was the actual theater though that they were working on. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, and the acoustics in there are amazing. It's a beautiful theater, and just Orchestra Hall. I mean, the Chicago Symphony should be playing in that space. The acoustics are amazing. But anyway, never mind.
I thought David Sedaris is coming back there again. I've seen him there a couple of times.
Yeah, but anyway, so I'm reading this book that Eleanor Roosevelt wrote. We kind of got off the topic here, but and it was written in 1960, and it's called Learn by Living is the name of the book. And she's so a product of the era, obviously. I mean, she's talks a lot about being a wife and a mom and all those things that you would expect. But she was such a free thinker, and she talks about being engaged in politics to the extent that know the issues and go and vote. I mean, that's I just found it really just kind of an amazing, very homespun, down to earth, kind of. I enjoyed it.
It probably wasn't quite as homespun as that book would.
No, she was very educated. She was very bright, very educated, but
and also a progressive, especially in women for women's issues and stuff. But I'm sure she was writing to the audience at the time.
Right. Well, that too. But anyway, it's a very fast read. It's not even 200 pages, I don't think, and you can read it. I literally read it in an evening, but I just really enjoyed it. So I strongly
got my coffee mug you brought me from where was it? Like New Mexico.
Oh yeah, look at that. No, from
Arizona, New Mexico, something like that.
It says on the bottom. It says on the bottom where it's from. It's
the something Pueblo.
Yeah, it's
I don't know what that is. Like the Kona Pueblo.
Yeah, it's not a coma, but yeah, it's one of the. We actually stopped. Yeah, no, you're right. It was Phoenix. We stopped at a Starbucks in Phoenix. Right.
And it was like a local artisan program they were doing. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And they were selling these coffee mugs. So the museum or the cultural center, whatever it was directly across the street, and the Starbucks was actually being operated by the cultural center.
That's really cool.
Yeah, the Pueblo. So they were selling those mugs, and but I went across the street to get more options and to see what the deal was, and I picked up like they were 4 different designs by 4 different Native American artists, and
you only gave one.
What?
And you only gave me one?
I only gave you one because I had to give one I had to keep one. I had to give one to Carl. I had to give one to the person who filled in for me, whose name escapes me right now. But And they weren't cheap, let me just say.
I'm sure they weren't.
You shouldn't be looking a gift horse in the mouth. Anyway, I knew that you'd want the black and white one because those are the compass colors. So
yeah, that's true.
Anyway, all right. Well, we're coming up on our time limit here. So again, if you have questions, comments, you have ideas of topics you'd like for Wes and I to ramble on about,
and get off topic on.
get off topic on. By all means, put them in the chat, and we will have a good week. Enjoy this beautiful weather. I think it's supposed to be like this most of the week, and
sounds good to me.
Yeah, and so bye for now.
Bye.